Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we're diving into a book that's gonna stay with you, I think.
Yeah.
It's called The Better Part of Worse.
Mm.
Historical fiction,
Right.
but the themes, oh my gosh, they are so relevant.
Yeah.
We're talking about love, mental illness,
Mm.
faith, family, and how they deal with some really, really tough stuff.
Yeah, what really struck me was how this book, being set in the early 1900s,
Right.
just throws you right into the reality of mental health care back then.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't just about the limited treatment options,
Right.
but like the whole societal understanding of conditions like schizophrenia,
Exactly.
which back then was called dementia precox.
Yeah.
It was just so different back then.
And The Better Part of Worse, it really doesn't shy away from anything.
No, it doesn't.
The story is about Jamie and Katie.
Mm-hmm.
They're this young couple,
Right.
and their love story, it takes a heartbreaking turn
Yeah.
when Katie starts showing signs of what we now know as schizophrenia.
Right. It's hard to even fathom.
Try to deal with that back then
Yeah.
without the medical knowledge
I
and
know.
the support systems that we have today.
It's almost unfathomable.
It really is.
The book, it paints such a vivid picture of their journey.
It does.
So we see Katie struggling with postpartum depression
Uh-huh.
after she gives birth to their daughter, Maggie.
Right.
And sadly, this just spirals
Oh.
into a full-blown psychotic break.
Oh, gosh.
And, the only option at the time,
Uh,
institutionalization.
Right.
So she ends up at Harlem Valley State Hospital,
Mm.
which was one of those massive asylums built on the Kirkbride model.
Yeah.
And the idea was to create this, tranquil healing space.
Right.
But a lot of times, these places ended up being very isolating and in many ways not equipped for real care.
Yeah. It's so heartbreaking to read about the limited treatment options that were available to Katie,
Yeah.
especially at that time.
Yeah.
And as you said, that Kirkbride model, I mean, their heart was in the right place,
Right.
but it didn't always work out the way they hoped.
And the novel does a great job of showing us just how stark
It does.
the reality was
Yeah.
inside one of these
It
institutions.
really does.
And it wasn't just the medical limitations.
Right.
The stigma surrounding mental illness was just immense.
Oh, absolutely.
And Katie's diagnosis just becomes this huge burden
Yeah.
for not just her, but for Jamie and their whole family.
This is really where the book shines.
Yes.
Because it gets into the human impact of all of this.
Yeah.
And Jamie's suddenly faced with all these really tough choices.
Right.
He's got to support Katie.
Mhm.
He's got to raise his daughters, Maggie, and then later they have Patsy and Bridie, and he's trying to hold his family together.
Right.
And you can see how strong he is
Mm-hmm.
and how resilient he is.
Right.
But you also see the toll that it takes on him
Yeah.
and everybody.
The ripple effect is just undeniable.
It is.
So, financially, they end up selling the family farm
Wow.
to pay for Katie's care.
Oh, gosh.
And emotionally, everybody's affected by this.
Of course.
Jamie, his mom, Peggy, who steps in to help his siblings, they all get pulled into this vortex of worry and uncertainty.
It's a lot.
It is.
And the impact on the kids
Oh, yes.
is really, really profound.
Yeah.
The Better Part of Worse shows how growing up with a mother
Right.
who's struggling with mental illness
Mm-hmm.
shapes Maggie, Patsy, and Bridie.
Yeah.
Each of them processes in their own way,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely leaves a mark on them.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that mental illness, it doesn't just affect the person who has it,
Right.
it affects everyone they love.
It radiates outwards.
It really does.
It does. And through all of this, all this hardship,
Yeah.
there's this other layer to the story,
Yeah.
which is Jamie's faith.
Right.
He and his family are devout Catholics, and their belief system, it really becomes this source of strength for them, but also a point of tension at times.
That is such a fascinating dynamic that the book explores.
It is.
You see Jamie wrestling with, is this God's will?
Right.
Why is this happening to my family?
Mm-hmm.
How do I reconcile my faith with all this pain?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that so many people can relate to,
Oh, absolutely.
who have faced similar challenges in their lives.
And it also highlights, how religion
Right.
really kind of influenced people's attitudes
Right.
towards mental illness.
Yeah.
Back then, there was
Right.
often this sense of shame.
Right.
Like mental illness was a punishment from God
Right.
or a sign of weakness.
Exactly.
So it's really interesting to see how Jamie tries to figure all that out internally and also in his community.
It's a lot.
It is.
And the book doesn't shy away from those tough questions.
Right.
And then things change.
Yeah.
With the discovery of Thorazine.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a total game changer.
It is.
This new drug that starts to change everything.
It really revolutionizes the treatment of mental illness.
It does.
I mean, before Thorazine,
Yep.
treatments were things like
Go.
insulin shock therapy or lobotomies,
Right.
procedures that were honestly really barbaric.
They were.
And Thorazine,
Right.
while it's not perfect,
Yeah.
and it does have side effects,
Right.
it gave people like Katie
Right.
a chance to actually find some relief
Exactly.
from their symptoms.
Gave them hope.
Yes.
And this is where Brady comes in.
Yeah.
Jamie's youngest daughter.
Right.
Her connection to the story, I think, is especially interesting.
Yeah.
Because she decides to become a nurse.
Uh-huh.
And she specializes in psychiatric care.
Right.
Clearly, her mom's experience had a big impact on her.
Oh, absolutely.
You can see how it shaped her career path.
She becomes a huge advocate for her mother.
Yeah.
She pushes for her to get Thorazine, and she really challenges those traditional approaches to care.
Yeah.
And she's not afraid to speak up,
She's not.
even when it means disagreeing with authority figures.
People who should know better.
Yeah,
It's really inspiring to see her determination
it is.
and how she just refuses to give up on her mom.
Right.
And then the story takes this crazy turn.
Yeah.
Bridie finds out something shocking
Yeah.
about who her father really is.
Mm-hmm.
She learns that she was conceived while Katie was institutionalized.
Oh, gosh.
And it just adds this whole other layer
It does.
of complexity to the story.
And raises so many questions
It does.
about, the ethics of mental health care back then,
Right.
especially the lack of agency and consent
Yeah.
that patients like Katie had to
Right.
deal with.
It's tough.
It is.
It's really tough to read this part of the book.
It is.
But it makes you face some uncomfortable truths
All right.
about how society treated people with mental illness back in the day.
And the better part of worse,
Yeah.
it doesn't sugarcoat anything.
It doesn't.
It shows how far we've come
Right.
in understanding and treating mental illness,
Yeah.
but it also shows us how far we still have to go.
Absolutely.
And even with Thorazine,
yeah.
it's not like a magic cure.
Right.
It takes time.
Of course.
And it's a long road.
Yeah.
And the book doesn't pretend it's easy.
It doesn't.
We see Katie getting better, but the illness, it leaves its mark,
Right.
both physically and emotionally.
It's a reminder that recovery is not a straight line.
It's not.
There are ups and downs.
Setbacks and breakthroughs,
Totally.
moments of hope and moments of despair.
It's true.
And even when you have the medication and you have the support,
yeah.
a serious mental illness like schizophrenia
Right.
can affect you your whole life.
It can.
And it's not just Katie who's affected.
Right.
Her whole family has to adjust
Yeah.
to this new normal. They have to find a way to reconnect and
Right.
to rebuild their life
After so much time apart.
after years of being separated and not knowing what the future holds.
And this is where the book shows us the real power of resilience.
It does.
Jamie never gives up on Katie.
Right.
And Brady becomes this incredible source of strength
Yeah.
for her mother.
Yeah. They each find their own way to heal.
Yeah.
And it shows us how strong love and family can be,
It does.
even when you're facing the toughest challenges.
What I found really touching
Yeah.
was how the book focuses on those little victories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those moments of joy and connection
Right.
in the midst of all the struggle.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even when things are really dark,
Mm-hmm.
there's always hope,
Always.
and that connecting with people
Mm-hmm.
can really help you heal.
Human connection is so powerful. And what I think is so powerful about the better part of worse is it's not just about this one family.
Right.
It really reflects like
Yeah.
all those changes.
The bigger picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture happening in the mid 20th century.
Mm.
So you see like the Depression,
Right.
World War II,
Mhm.
the changing roles of women.
Yeah.
It's almost like this historical tapestry woven into their story.
It's true.
Yeah.
It really adds depth to the story
Yeah.
to see how all those big events
Mhm.
affect their lives.
Yeah,
You know, it's just another layer of challenges for them.
absolutely.
But through it all, the book never loses sight.
Yeah.
The human side of things.
The human element.
You see how these characters, they grow and they adapt
Mhm.
and they find ways to cope
Right.
with these really, really tough situations.
And it makes you think about
Yeah.
how much has changed,
Right.
but also how much is still the same.
It does.
So we've come a long way
Yeah.
in how we understand and treat mental illness,
Thankfully.
but the stigma's still there,
It is.
you know,
To a degree.
to a degree, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And those ethical issues that the book brings up.
like
Oh.
patient autonomy,
Right.
informed consent.
Mm-hmm.
Those are conversations we're still having
Oh, yeah, we are.
today. So it's a good reminder
Yeah.
that progress isn't always a straight line.
It's not.
There's always new things to figure out,
New challenges.
new challenges to face.
New conversations to have.
Yeah.
But what really struck me about The Better Part of Worse
Yeah,
was that it never gives up hope,
that's true.
even when things seem really bleak.
Yeah.
These characters,
Right.
they hold on to hope.
They keep fighting
Yeah.
for a better future.
They do.
And I think that's why this book really resonates with people.
I agree.
It reminds us that even when things are really tough,
Right.
there's always a chance for healing
Mm-hmm.
and growth.
And connection.
And that sometimes
Yeah,
love and resilience
Right.
are the strongest things we have.
they are.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into The Better Part of Worse,
What do you think listeners should take away from this book?
well, I think the most important thing is to remember that everyone's story is complicated.
Right?
And we should approach these topics with empathy
Of course.
and a willingness to listen
Yeah.
and to learn.
Absolutely.
This book really challenges us
It does.
to face some hard truths
Yeah.
about the history of mental health care and how stigma still affects people today.
It's true.
But it also gives us a message of hope
Right?
and resilience,
It does.
showing that even when things are at their worst,
Mm.
the human spirit can find a way to keep going.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
Well, we've just scratched the surface here.
We have.
But if you're looking for a book
Yeah.
that will stay with you, I highly recommend The Better Part of Worse.
It's a good one.
What resonated most with you?
Yeah.
Was it Katie's story? The historical setting?
Right.
The themes of faith and family?
All of it.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from you.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive,
Yeah.
don't forget to like and subscribe.
And share it with your friends.
We'll be back soon
We will.
with another deep dive.
Until then, keep exploring.
Keep learning.
Keep the conversation going.